Oh, so yeah. So we're starting that. Welcome to the Dorm Room History Podcast. Especially, we would like to welcome anyone who's returning, who listened to it previously and then came back and is listening again. You get a special reward.
What's it gonna be?
The reward of consistency, the good feeling that we get.
The consistency reward is one of the best awards you could receive, honestly.
When we are consistent in life, we get that good feeling in our tummies, and we're happy.
That's all I have to say about that.
Anything to add?
No, I think you said it the way I wanted to say it.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, you may be wondering, why is he crouched down like that while he's talking right now? I'm taking my shoes off because I'm trying to get comfy. Okay.
This is how we get comfy here.
Listen, this is a comfortable podcast. This is something you could lay down. You could fall asleep to this joint.
Yeah, you could.
Although you may just not be able to because you're laughing so hard.
Probably. I mean, this week with China, if you just skip to the end where I'll probably review all the Chinese names, you could just play that on repeat and fall asleep to that.
Chinese name ASMR. Okay. Well, so for this week in history.
Okay.
202 BC. Ring a bell for anyone here?
It does, actually. I believe that's the start of the Han Dynasty. Is that what you're talking about?
Whoa.
Did I guess it, actually?
Yeah, you nailed that.
Oh, no way.
This week in history, the coronation ceremony of Liu Bang as Emperor of Zhao, or of Han, takes place, initiating 4 centuries of the Han Dynasty's rule over China. And might I add, 4 billion people die.
Classic Chinese history.
Classic Chinese history, man. Also in 1922, we all know what England has done in history. A lot of
going to
going to, well, we all know what they've done. They go to a lot of countries and they say, well, this is our country now.
Okay.
England is a big fan of that, or they were.
They do like to do that. Mm-hmm.
But in 1922, they released Egypt.
Oh, really?
They said, all right, okay, guys, fine. Turns out there wasn't anything under the pyramids. You guys can have your country back.
Here, dang, take it.
Jeez. So yeah, that's what happened this week in history. So if you were wondering, if you have a friend that's like, dude, I wonder what happened a long time ago this week. I'm just saying, you could let them know now.
Cool fact to bring up on a date if you think the date's going so bad it doesn't matter anymore.
You ever heard of the Han Dynasty of China? That's true, actually. Yeah, good point. Yeah. So yeah, with that, we're going to get right into this week's history.
Yep.
Which this week we're talking about something really super duper exciting
and unique.
And you may have already guessed it because you did kind of give it away.
Oh yeah, first before I give it away to everybody, we're gonna play a little game.
Whoa!
So this podcast doubles as a game show, right?
Yes, obviously.
This game is called "I'm gonna send you a quote by a German guy named Lippold von Rank, and you're gonna try to pronounce it."
That's good. I can already see that title in my mind.
Okay, so go ahead. Yeah, it's a new set. Do you mind if we do a new segment?
New segment. Dude, I would love to.
Okay, so I just texted you a German quote, and you're gonna try to pronounce it. And this is the bonus trick to this game is that I also don't know how to pronounce it, so there's no right answer. You just kind of give it a go.
Okay, here we go. Oh, wow. Okay. Wie es eigentlich gewesen ist.
So I can't tell you if that's right or wrong, honestly.
No one knows.
Probably it's exactly how the Germans would have said it.
Probably pretty similar.
No, that means in English, history as it actually was. Okay? And that's a really big deal in history because for most of time that humans have existed, knowing the absolute facts of history was not as important as telling a story to the ancient peoples. And so even as recent as the 1700s, instead of recording things we would like them to be recorded today in our history books, I'm just telling you all the facts of what happened. Instead, usually they're telling stories. And this is true 4,000 years ago, and it's true 300 years ago. And so in the late 1700s, early 1800s, this is a German quote that's representing the change in narrative of history, where instead of saying, we're going to teach a story, we're now going to tell history the way it actually was, as unbiased as possible.
Interesting.
Okay.
So we're transitioning from painting things on walls and being look how cool I am, to being well, this is what actually happened.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Right. And these are people the father of history, Herodotus, who, is very, very renowned. He more is here's some stories I've heard, but I'm going to tell you the coolest one. It doesn't matter which one's most accurate. This is of all the stories I heard, this is the coolest one. I'm going to tell you that one.
It's just kind of Herodotus' favorite stories.
Yep. But that's basically how history is up until these German guys make this idea of whatever Blake said, history as it actually was.
Yeah.
Right.
Verben gang instincting.
Except for one tiny point in history.
Mm.
During a Chinese dynasty called the Han Dynasty.
Whoa.
They're starting to formulate this idea of we want history to be how it actually was.
Okay.
And we want to record the facts. But that's very, very much further on and developed in Chinese society than where we're going to start.
Okay.
We're going to lead you up to that point. So we're going to start just with a brief summary where we left off last time we hit China.
Mm-hmm.
We had the Shang Dynasty.
Yes, sir.
We had the Zhou Dynasty.
Shangzhou. Qin Han.
Qin Han. So those are the two that we're going to cover in today, along with some couple bonus dynasties.
Whoa.
If we can get there.
Bonus dynasty for those who are willing to, if we have time, I guess.
if we have time in our short amount of time we have left.
Yes.
But let's go ahead and just start with some basic characteristics of these dynasties. And we're going to start with the end of the Zhou Dynasty. Now, near the end of the Zhou Dynasty, there's a very famous person that's born in 551 BC. His name is Confucius.
Mm.
You heard of this man?
Listen, I know his work.
Confucius is, as you can probably guess, is the guy who comes up with the ideas of Confucianism.
Mm.
Confucianism is a Chinese philosophy in which you kind of just like respect your parents and be a good person.
Oh, okay.
So there's not a lot to it more than that. Just like kind of do good things. Be good generally.
He came up with the idea that, hey, like
do good.
Be nice. Be nice.
Yeah. So that's Confucianism in a nutshell. I mean, obviously there's so much more nuances we could go into, but just for the purpose of understanding Chinese history, basically, Confucianism is you should do what is morally correct.
Mm. And life's easier if you just, don't complicate things, and we just decide that let's think of it that way,
Yeah, history is very black and white. There's nothing more complex in Confucius's life than that. It's kind of all he did. No, Confucius is a really, really important historical figure, and this is going to be, ever since Confucianism has existed, China has loved it. Kind of up until today. I don't know, they're kind of straying away from Confucianism today. But even like later on in later Chinese dynasties, they're going to have what's called it's called the examination system, where basically in order to hold a governmental position, you have to pass a Confucian exam, which is basically like, are you going to be a good person? Do you have family values? All that stuff. So kind of something I wish we maybe did in America.
Dude, that'd be a good person test would be a nice test to have.
Good person test would be a good test to have. And Confucius has two students that are following him. They actually live much later than him. They're students of him, not as he like goes to their house and teaches them, as like they study him much later on.
Oh, okay.
And these two students' names are Mencius and Shunzi. Now, if Shunzi sounds like a lot of other names we've talked about, you're right.
Well, then get ready for the other names we're about to drop later.
These guys have very different takes on Confucianism. So if we remember where we are in the timeline, we're near the end of the Zhou Dynasty, which means we're about to enter into a period called the Warring States period, where there's a lot of war going on. And Shunzi sees this war, and he lives through a lot of the Warring States period, so he sees all this war as like, Confucius is right that you should be good, but it's hard to be that way because people are just inherently so bad. And then Mencius is his counterpart. Mencius says, no, I think humans are actually inherently good.
Oh.
So have you ever seen the episode of Community? You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Anyone who knows. That's a good episode.
That's a great episode, that debate of whether people are inherently good or bad.
Yeah.
But both these people are students of Confucius. Shunzi believes people are inherently bad. Mencius believes people are inherently good.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, just to sum up Confucianism, it's almost like similar to the Golden Rule, honestly.
Yeah. Do unto others as you would do unto them as well, also.
Just basically like Addie likes to say, just be a good person challenge.
Well,
right.
It's really hard.
It's sometimes hard. Shunzi would think it was hard.
He'd be like, everyone actually sucks, so you can't do be a good person challenge.
Can't do be a good person challenge. Around this time, you also get some other, just at the end of the Zhou Dynasty, starting into the Warring States period and the dynasties afterwards, you get some other schools of thought. The next one we're going to talk about is Taoism.
Oh, okay.
Or Taoism. It's kind of like this idea of, have you ever seen the yin and yang thing?
Mm-hmm.
That's like a Taoist symbol.
Okay.
Yeah. So it focuses on just be free, just do you. Just imagine like hippies.
Just chill, man.
Just like do whatever.
You're fine. Did they smoke weed back then?
Sell whatever you want, man. I don't think, maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how old like weed is in society.
They had their chai tea probably.
I don't know when they figured that out. Yeah, probably the chai tea.
Dude, they were like, just chill out.
Yep.
And then they took a little sip.
The last way of thinking is called legalism.
Mm.
And legalism is very, very strict, and like these are the rules that will make you a good person, and you do them exactly. So there's not a lot of room to mess up, but also it puts a very strict hold on your society. But also, in theory, it's there because people are doing. You want people to do the right thing,
Right.
and so you're forcing them to do the right thing. So you don't have any problems anymore, I guess.
Dude, shout out legalism. Just follow the law. It's not hard. It is actually really hard
It's
to
not
follow
that
the law.
it's not that hard,
For
honestly.
me.
Well, for jaywalkers like
I don't know.
us that are part of the jaywalking community.
If you're part of the jaywalking community, you know you're taking your life in your hands when you jaywalk, but you don't care.
That's what we're talking. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that totally. But because we're in this warring states period, so if you remember, the Zhou dynasty is made of a bunch of different like feudalistic states who band together, kind of like the Articles of Confederation of the United States. And so they start to split apart and start to fight each other. And so you can see that the next dynasty that comes into power in China is scared that that might happen again.
Oh,
And so they're strictly legalist,
okay.
which means they're going to be very harsh and strict with their laws. Which, I mean, kind of makes sense if you look at it,
Mm-hmm.
right? If the Zhou dynasty was so, like, loose, you want to, like, totally combat that.
Yeah.
It'd be very, very strict.
Yeah.
And
Often the pendulum swings much further than it
Exactly.
needs to.
But see, that's true of all the dynasties that we're going to cover today. Absolutely. So if the Zhou dynasty was maybe a little too Taoist, the Qin dynasty, which is next, is going to probably be a little bit too legalist. The Qin dynasty is very, very short, but a lot of the famous Chinese stuff comes from the Qin dynasty. The first emperor of the Qin dynasty, his name is Qin Shi Huangdi.
Ooh.
So
Calm down.
you ever hear Huangdi, Qin Shi Huangdi? That's first emperor of the Qin dynasty. He's also the homie that does the Terracotta Warriors.
Oh, Huang Di.
Mm-hmm.
So you can remember as like Huang Di's Warriors.
Huangdi's Warriors.
Huang Di's Warriors. And then you can remember they were under the ground there.
Yep. So if you don't know what the Terracotta Warriors are, they're like huge, massive clay
Mm-hmm.
molded army of these warriors made out of terracotta, obviously.
I'd go ahead and set aside an hour in your day and just look at pictures of those. Just Google images, probably.
They're actually really cool. They're
Yeah.
all like very, very uniquely painted. Like
Mhm.
none of them are like copies of each other. Like we have like army soldiers today.
Yeah. We'll see. I'd spend an hour.
All you-
Bonus points if you want to make a slideshow of your favorite terracotta warrior pictures.
There are some cool documentaries about them.
Yeah. Go check it out.
It's also where China gets its name from the Qin dynasty. You can kind of hear it in the name Qin. And like I said, please, after you finish listening to this, go and look at all the words I'm saying written out because they do not look like how they sound ever. And then you're also like, I mean, this is very hotly debated when the Great Wall of China was actually started, but a lot of people do think it was started during the Qin dynasty. And so even though the Qin dynasty is only about 19 or 20 years long, a lot gets done in that short Qin dynasty. But like Blake was saying, the pendulum swings too far legalist. These people are like, the Qin dynasty is just so strict that the people are kind of getting frustrated with the government.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons for the Qin dynasty's collapse. And then you get the Han dynasty, which we've already mentioned a little bit.
Because if you remember, Shangzhou Qin Han, Shangzhou Qin Han, Lao Gong Mao. Oh.
We're actually going to hit some other ones. We're going to hit the Sui dynasty and the Tang dynasty next.
Oh, okay.
Sui, Tang, Sung.
Sweet Tang Sun.
Not the Song dynasty, but we'll hit the Sui and Tang. So yeah, Shangzhou Qin Han, Sui, Tang, Sung.
Sun.
In the Han dynasty, this is like, if you're gonna live in China, this is the dynasty you want to live under. This is like the golden age. So they're like very, very successful technologically.
Mm-hmm.
They actually make this thing. I
All
believe it's
you avid time machine users take notes because this is where you're gonna want
This
to
is
go.
where you're gonna want to head out.
Yeah.
I believe. Don't quote me on this, but I believe this is when they do. It's kind of like the first evidence we have of printing.
Oh,
So they
okay.
do something called a wood block print,
Yeah.
where you carve something into a piece of wood and you'll paint ink on it and then stamp it. It's tricky because like once you carve that piece of wood, like that's the only thing you can ever print.
Yeah.
It's just exactly what that
It's-
is.
One time use. You're basically making like really complicated stamps.
Yeah.
I'm actually very familiar with woodblock printing. It's actually something that's really cool to me.
Oh, actually?
Yeah, no. If you guys want to learn more about woodblock printing, go check out David Bull on YouTube.
Oh,
He's a
cool.
super old dude. Not super old, but he's this old dude.
Okay.
Because Japan also has a big tradition of woodblock
Okay.
printing, and he's lived in Japan since he was like a teenager.
That's
and he
cool.
like got really into it, and now he owns like a company that makes these woodblock prints by hand.
Oh, that's sick.
And sells them. But he has videos on how they do it in the shop and where they do all the traditional methods. So if you want to learn about it, go check out David Bull.
That's sweet. So I also just fact checked myself. By the way, I was wrong. It's not during the Han Dynasty.
Oh,
It's a little bit later, but I was a little nervous about that. So good thing I fact checked myself.
that's good. That's good. But also still cool. So go check it
Yeah,
out.
no, it's still during the time period we're going to talk about. It's around the 7th century CE. So not during the I think during the Tang Dynasty that would be. So during the Tang Dynasty, so a little bit later on we'll hit that one. But anyway, back to the Han Dynasty. They're going to blend Confucianism, which every single Chinese dynasty is always big on Confucianism, with the idea of legalism, but a little bit less so. Because they were just like, they don't want to be as legalist as the dynasty before them.
Oh, okay.
Right? They don't want to be as harsh and strict and stuff.
So they're like legalism, but back it off a little.
They're during the Han Dynasty. It's contemporary with Rome, in case you're wondering, just like timeline, crossover event happening the same time as Rome. But the biggest threat to China, as always, do you know what the biggest threat to China might be?
It's always going to be foreigners, right? Don't they always blame everything on foreigners?
They love to blame everything on foreigners. But to be fair to China, like they do have some of those fearsome foreigners you have. So to the north of China, if you watched Mulan, you know it's the Huns.
Dude.
You'd actually know it's probably not true, but there are some other people that are similar to the Huns that are very, very closely related to the Huns. They're called the Xiongnu.
Okay.
The Xiongnu are later eventually going to be the Mongols. But this is way, way, way before the Mongols, about 1,000 years.
This is after they're defeated by a girl.
Yeah.
Then they become the Mongols. They're like, we got to change our name.
The Xiongnu are nomadic horse archers.
Okay.
So they are very,
Which
very
is just
good.
like a sick combo, by the way.
Yeah.
If you were to combine any classes in human history.
What, nomadic and horse archer?
Horse archer. Pretty sick.
There's a lot of them. And like, so also I'm doing the Mongol lecture later on this year as well. And there's going to be a lot where we talk about the Mongols just with like where they live in the steppe. And so they live in this place called the steppe, like I was saying, which is kind of Central Asia. Basically, if you go from like Georgia, the country, not the state, all the way over to like Korea, there's just this vast wilderness. Like,
It's kind of just flat, right?
Yep.
Kind of just like a flat land.
Very conducive to the horse. And so these guys, like, you're growing up on a horse. Usually in Xiongnu society, you learn how to ride a horse before you learn how to walk.
Whoa.
So
That's pretty baller, actually.
yeah. And they also
We should
like,
do that with motorcycles in America.
Some people probably do.
Just an idea.
They imagine like a whole army of like trick riders, like a circus archer.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, like they consistently, like there are consistent reports of them shooting like multiple birds out of the air with one arrow.
Oh, whoa.
And it's a whole army that can do that.
Okay. Because they got nothing else to do. They're just out in the wilderness on a horse. They just figure out fun things
And
to
what
do.
they do is they time their shots over, so they pull back their bow, and then while there's like a brief split second where all 4 of the horse's legs are off the ground, that's when they're trained to fire it.
Oh, whoa.
Specifically there, so it's like the most stable.
That's actually crazy.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild to think about those things that are like a lost art nowadays. Like, no one knows how to
no
do
one
that.
can do that. No,
Because like we don't need to necessarily anymore. But like also it's just kind of crazy. Like we used to be able to do that as humans, and now we can't.
Yeah, no one can do that. And they're going to become more and more fearsome as time goes on, and they're going to be more and more technologically advanced. And they're going to have better leadership. But these are like the proto-Mongols. And lest you believe that once all the men are gone from the camp, you can just go invade, because the women are just as brutal. There's a tradition of the steppe that you can't marry someone until you've killed someone in war if you're a woman.
Whoa.
In the Xiongnu Confederacy.
So like it's like you're looking for women to date. Like, have you killed someone in war? Sorry. Next.
They're very, very fearsome as well.
Okay.
So this is the threat that China has on its northern border. So yes, they do blame everything on foreigners, but like to be fair, their foreigners are
pretty lit.
And so that's one of the reasons. That's the main reason they create the Great Wall of China, is to keep these guys out. So it was started during the Qin Dynasty, probably. During the Han Dynasty, they're very, very scared of the Xiongnu, which makes sense. They negotiate with them for a long time. Basically, it's just the Xiongnu being like, hey, we want to attack you if you give us tons of gold. And they're like, okay, we'll do it. And then like the next day is like, hey, we thought we should probably attack you anyway. And so then they're like, we'll give you more gold. And they just keep coming back like every so often.
That's sick. Good way to get gold.
Yeah.
A good gold getting scheme for anyone out there trying to get some gold right now. So here's an interesting question that I think will be interesting for a lot of people that listen to our podcast, because it has a little bit to do with family history,
Okay.
which is a weird thing we do.
Mm-hmm.
We like a lot.
I enjoy it.
So this guy says, my father recently got obsessed with genealogy and apparently found that Charlemagne and Charles Martel are among our ancestors. How much of that is credible? If it isn't, how can I tell him without offending him? Which you don't have to get in that second part, but how much of that is credible? And when we look at family history and stuff like that, does it really matter? Like, are we all just kind of related to that guy anyways?
That's a good question. I'm gonna be honest for a second.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not from China or Korea or Japan, you can't trace your family history past 1400. Like if you go any farther back than that, that's probably inaccurate.
Okay.
Because I mean, the only people that were very, very good at, I mean, there are people that are good at creating records in the Western world, like Rome is very, very good at it. But for the large part, until you hit the Renaissance, they're not great at record keeping. And so Charlemagne and Charles Martel are happening before the Renaissance. And so the odds that you can follow a family line back that far are very, very low, unless you literally are like the royal family of Germany or like
Right.
the royal family of France.
Okay.
And even that is sketchy. So like if you're going on Family Search or like Ancestry.com and like just clicking the back button as far as you can, be very wary of anything that is previous to 1400 because the odds are very low that it's right, unless you're from like China or Korea.
Interesting. Do you think people back then would have lied about their ancestry too, to be like, I'm related to this king, because like it makes you better standing?
Yeah. In Greece, in fact, they did it all the time. You would, because like in the ancient world and for most of time, slavery has existed, but it wasn't like based on your race. It was just like you were enslaved. Like white people would enslave white people, black people would enslave white people. Like it does only in America in like the 1800s is slavery really based on your race.
Interesting.
And so like Greek people who were enslaved like flee, go to another town and just be like, hey, I'm a totally different person.
Oh.
Because they couldn't tell you were a slave anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's not just
That's
your race.
Fair. Interesting. So this is kind of similar to Abraham Lincoln receiving a fax from a samurai kind of deal.
Yeah.
Which if you're not familiar with that, look that up.
That's sick.
Because that is sick. Essentially,
Type what Blake said and then put Reddit at the end.
Reddit. Because Google sucks and you have to put Reddit at the end of all your searches now. But essentially I mean is there was a brief period in history where Abraham Lincoln was the president of the United States, samurai still existed in Japan, and the fax machine was invented.
Yep.
So Abraham Lincoln could have received a fax from a samurai. Anyway, this is a similar vein to that. So Rome, as in Byzantium actually,
Okay.
fell in 1453. Columbus, we all know Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492.
Yes.
What are the chances, or do we actually just know, that someone born in the Roman Empire or Byzantium went to America?
Ooh, that is a really, really interesting question. Here's why I would say that's probably not accurate.
Okay.
Because the people that are coming to America are, I mean, you already have to understand that people don't get old in the ancient world. I mean,
Oh, that's fair.
unless you're very, very rich, you're not getting old. I mean, like in early Rome, where people are very, very healthy and successful, like you're getting 70, 80-year-olds all the time. But in late Rome, and especially when Byzantium is being like besieged for hundreds of years by the Ottomans,
Right.
like the odds that anyone's living to be very old in Byzantium are very, very low.
Okay, that takes a toll on you.
Yeah, and so in theory, you'd have to be like born in like say 1450. You're born there, so you're technically born in the Roman Empire, and then you make it all the way to Spain or Portugal or the Netherlands, somewhere that's sending people to the New World. By that time, you're like, what, 40? And so the odds that you get chosen to go to America when you're 40 years old,
Yeah, you're on the brink of death.
also very low.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So I mean, I'm not gonna rule it out, but I'm gonna say odds are low.
Probably not.
Yeah. But I guess in theory, that's actually a sick question. Did you think
Yeah.
of that or did you find it?
I found that, yeah.
That's a cool idea.
It's an interesting thought, huh?
Yeah.
There you go. Well, that's our query corner for this week. We've queried out of this corner,
Word.
and now we're going to query on into the next corner of
Back
questioning.
into China. Eventually they are no longer really able to negotiate with the Xiongnu, and so they start attacking, and so the Han dynasty is having to send more people and more resources to go work on the Great Wall of China. And because the labor is so intense there and the rate of death is so high, the people are getting very frustrated. It leads to civil unrest and like internal conflicts in the Han dynasty.
Oh, okay.
And so that's one of the reasons they fall, just because of these foreigners, which will be a theme. Everyone falls because of the nomadic steppe people.
Dude, those guys go crazy later. I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah, like the armies are brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal stuff. People in history have asked me like, I wonder like But would they really have like done good against like the Roman army or like European knights or things like that? Well, I actually did fight them and they actually demolished them. In case you're wondering.
It's just the Mongols, just like that's all they could do, is they could fight really well.
Yep.
They didn't work on statecraft or anything like
Didn't
that.
do pretty much anything else.
They didn't rule the people after they beat them. They just did it for fun.
Yep. And then if you did, like, there was one grandson of Genghis Khan who like did try to rule the people, and all the other Mongols like, okay, you're soft, man.
Okay, go conquer someone else, loser.
So that's gets us to the end of the Han Dynasty. The next one we have the Sui Dynasty. That one's only about 30 years. The main achievement you're gonna want to know from the Sui Dynasty is they built something called the Grand Canal, which connects two big rivers in China, the Yellow River and the Yangtze River. So
Okay.
big for them, big on infrastructure, that kind of thing.
Hey, way to get that done, you know?
Yep.
Not a lot of people get things done anymore.
Not a lot of people are getting
Yeah.
things done. We should throw back to the Sui Dynasty when you get things done.
When they used to get things done.
And then the last dynasty we're going to hit today is the Tang Dynasty. This one is known for spreading Buddhism to all of China.
Okay.
So for the next 1,000 years, maybe even, Buddhism is going to be the predominant religion in China.
Okay.
And we're going to hit on a couple things about Buddhism really quick. Just even though we hit on them last time, we'll hit on them again. You got Four Noble Truths, if you remember this.
Mm-hmm.
And the logic goes something like this. First Noble Truth says, all life is suffering. Every part of your life is suffering. Second Noble Truth goes like this. The source of your suffering is your desire for things.
Undesirable.
Stop
now.
wanting things, man.
Stop.
Makes you suffer. Third Noble Truth goes like this. If you remove your desire, you remove your suffering. Logically makes sense, right?
Remove my desire now.
And the fourth Noble Truth is if you want to remove your suffering, you're going to follow the Eightfold Path, which we talked about last time. Just
Eightfold me now.
The Eightfold Path includes things like talk right, do things right, just be a good person in general.
Do everything right.
Yep. And then there's two kinds of Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism, which is generally in China. So this is like you see pictures of like a fat, laughing, happy Buddha. Because he's just eating, drinking, and being merry and trying to not suffer.
And for anyone listening to the last podcast, that's M-type right there.
And then the other type is Theravada. And that's mostly in India, so we're not going to talk about it as much. But
Yeah.
more extreme kind of Buddhism, more traditional kind of Buddhism. China's known for exporting a lot of things like iron and porcelain and salt, and mostly silk. Okay, that's how silk is kind of how Buddhism gets there. Because let me check that real quick.
No, it's fine. I was just sitting up.
Yeah, so the silk is transported away from China, exported away from China on something called the Silk Road, which is a road that goes like into India and into other places in the world. And so that's how Buddhism gets from India to China, is on the Silk Road.
Okay. Transportation, man. Those crazy things.
But just a summary of all these different dynasties, they all are very Confucius, right? And they all just like family values are a good thing, and they're all scared of the Mongols. That's kind of like, or not the Mongols, just the steppe people, the Xiongnu that are north of them. So those are kind of the similarities that you can find in every single one of these dynasties.
There you go.
We'll do a quick review of these things.
Yeah.
Just like the names and important things. You got the three schools of thought. You've got Confucianism, family values. You've got, and the golden rule, that kind of thing, like reciprocity, like I give you something, you give back to me. That's how Confucianism works.
We're nice to each other.
Taoism or Taoism is just everyone kind of chill out a little bit. Just relax. Go with the flow, man.
Life's good.
Right. And then
Sip on your chai tea.
Legalism, which is the opposite of that.
Which is like everyone follow the freaking law.
Follow the freaking law is a great way to put it. Then you have the dynasties Shang, Zhou, Qin, Han, Sui, Tang. Okay? So in the Qin dynasty, very legalist. They have the Terracotta Warriors.
My boy Huangdi.
Huangdi, maybe where the Great Wall of China was started.
Possibly.
Very legalist. That's the reason for their fall. You have the Han dynasty. This is the golden age of China. Okay? There's, like, those are the historians that do history the way it actually was. Just a lot of, like, advancements, cultural advancements in the Han dynasty. Sui dynasty, they make the Grand Canal, connects the rivers.
Right.
And then the Tang dynasty is known for spreading Buddhism everywhere. You got that?
Go Tangs.
Let's quick hit on a couple more people. The two students of Confucius. Mencius.
Mencius.
Believes people are good.
Right.
Shunzi,
Mm-hmm.
thinks it'd be pretty hard to do the Be a Good Person challenge.
Yeah. So you can think of Mencius, he's kind of more Taoism, and then Shangxi,
Shunzi,
he's more legalism.
but they're both Confucius's students. Yeah.
Both a branch of that.
Hmm.
Kind of like a Minecraft mod. They kind of modded Confucianism.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Similar to a Minecraft mod. No other mods, just Minecraft.
Just Minecraft mods.
Shout out
Mainly.
April 4th when the movie comes out. Dude, Minecraft Pocket Edition sent me a notification today that was like, the Minecraft movie drops April 4th.
They're really trying to let you know
They
about
really
that.
want,
Huh?
they're trying to spread that out.
Dang. All right. Well, that's good to know that it's coming out like that.
Yeah. Anyways, that's all the info we got today. Just want to make it a quicker one. We got places to be
Mhm.
today, but hopefully the information makes sense, and hopefully you had some fun listening
Yeah.
to us.
So this week for our outro, I'm gonna just hit you with some whale noises. I've been working on my whale noises.
Okay. For a second, I was like, why are there whale noises? I'm in Utah.
I'm gonna cut it right there.
Okay.